Claire stepped back, shaking her head. "He's not here to hurt you," she whispered. "But he's not here to comfort you either. He's here because the truth is too big to stay buried any longer." I didn't know how to respond to that. My heart felt like it was beating against a wall inside my chest. Finally, with a breath that tasted like fear, I turned the knob. The door opened. A tall man stood on the porch, older than me by a few years, maybe, though the lines on his face were carved deeper, not by age, but by guilt. His hair was gray at the temples, his shoulders broad but slumped. As if carrying 40 years of weight, he never learned to set down. When he lifted his eyes to mine deep, exhausted, blue as winter shadows, my entire body jolted. Recognition slammed into me, not as a memory, but as a sensation, as familiarity older than recollection. Claire gasped behind me. "You made it," she said. The man exhaled slowly. "I told you I would." He stepped forward, not toward Claire, toward me. "Hello, Robin," he said softly. My throat tightened. Do I know you?" His eyes softened with an unbearable sadness. "Yes," he whispered. "Better than anyone." Claire wiped her eyes. "Robin, this is Thomas." The name hit me like a blow, not because I remembered it, but because I felt it deeply. A name my bones recognized. I swallowed hard. "Thomas, how do we know each other?" He took a slow breath. "We were both there the night Emily disappeared, and we've both spent our lives running from what happened." A cold shiver crawled across my chest. "Tell me," I whispered. "Tell me everything." He nodded once, stepping inside, closing the door behind him with gentle finality. "It was the end of summer," he began. "The last day before she vanished. You were supposed to walk her home. She asked you to come back and say goodbye before she started school." His voice trembled. "You promised her, and you don't break promises. Not to children." He paused, rubbing the bridge of his nose as if fighting off tears. "But you didn't know. You didn't know she wasn't going home that night." Claire pressed a hand to her mouth, looking away. Thomas continued. "She waited for you on the bridge. Hours passed. You didn't come. You had a show that night. A rehearsal ran late. You were younger than ambitious, hungry, hopeful." His eyes dimmed. "And because you weren't there, she wandered off alone." My chest twisted painfully. "No," I whispered. I don't." But Thomas shook his head gently. "It wasn't your fault. You didn't know. You would have come. You always came for her." He looked at Claire, voice cracking. But someone else was watching her. Someone who knew she'd be alone if Robin didn't show up. Claire's face hardened. "Our father," she whispered. Thomas nodded grimly. "The man who believed Emily didn't belong to this world. That she knew too much. That she saw things before they happened." My stomach twisted. "Saw things." Claire nodded. "Emily had moments. She'd describe events before they occurred, like knowing when storms were coming, or when someone would call before the phone rang." Her voice dropped. "She saw the night she disappeared. She wrote it in her journal. She tried to warn me. She told me you were in danger too." My knees weakened. I sank onto the couch, the letter trembling in my hand. "Why me?" Claire exchanged a look with Thomas. A heavy silence passed before she answered. "Because you were the only adult she trusted," she whispered. "And our father hated that." Thomas cleared his throat. "That night, when she vanished, you found her journal. You saw the last entry she ever wrote." His voice softened. It said, "If I disappear, he'll come for Robin next." My breath stopped. "And then," Thomas's jaw tightened, "you went to the woods behind the bridge, searching for her, calling her name. You found something by the creeks, something that broke you in a way no one understood." Claire's voice cracked. "You found her ribbon, the one she wore every day." My hands shook, and then I collapsed. "Yes," Thomas said quietly, "from shock, from grief, from the truth." He paused. "When I found you, you kept saying, 'I promised, I promised, I promised.' You didn't stop until you lost consciousness." Claire wiped her eyes. "When you woke up, your mind protected you. It erased everything." Thomas nodded. "Nora tried to help you, remember, for years. But every time the memories came back, even a little, you got worse. So she did the only thing she could." His voice broke. "She made you forget, to save you." Silence pressed into the room like a storm. Finally, I managed to whisper, Why send the photo now? Why bring all this back? Thomas swallowed hard. Because they found something 2 weeks ago. Claire nodded. Deep in the woods, near where Emily disappeared. What did they find? I asked, afraid of the answer. Thomas's voice was barely a breath. Her locket, buried under fresh dirt. Fresh, not decades old. Fresh, my head spun. You're saying she might still be alive? Claire's eyes filled with tears. I'm saying she might have been alive much longer than we thought. Maybe she was taken somewhere. Hidden, Thomas added quietly. Maybe she's still waiting for you to keep your promise. A sound broke the tense stillness, the shuffle of gravel outside the window. Claire's face paled. Thomas lowered his voice to a whisper. They followed me here. My heartbeat thundered. Who? Claire answered. Our father's followers. The ones who believed Emily had a gift they needed. My blood froze. Thomas stepped in front of me. Robin, they want the photo. They think the background will lead them to where Emily was taken. Claire pointed to the bridge behind us in the picture. That creek isn't the one from our childhood. She swallowed. It's from somewhere else. Somewhere she was moved to. The car door slammed outside. Footsteps approached. Thomas looked at me with painful urgency. Robin, listen to me. You're the last person she trusted. You're the only person she believed would come for her. My breath trembled. But I don't remember anything. Claire knelt beside me. You don't need to remember, she whispered. Just keep the promise. The knock at the door rattled the walls. 3 men's silhouettes darkened the window. Thomas grabbed my shoulder. Robin, are you ready? And for the first time in 40 years, I felt something return. Something small, but fierce. Something buried under decades of silence. I felt the promise. The one I made to a little girl who once held my hand. And this time I would not fail her. If you stayed with me through this entire story, thank you. Some promises stay with us, even when our memories don't. And sometimes all it takes is a single moment, a photo, a voice, a face, to remind us who we were meant to be. If this story brought back a memory of your own, or touched your heart in any way, I'd be honored to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you'd like to join me for more emotional, nostalgic stories like this one, feel free to subscribe and leave a like. It truly helps this little corner of storytelling stay alive. Until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. The truth about why Margaret had called for me didn't fully settle in until I sat alone in her room after she drifted into a light, uneasy sleep. The soft hum of the heart monitor filling the silence like a reminder that time was no longer something she had in abundance. And as the afternoon sun slanted through the blinds in thin golden lines, I found myself staring at the letter I had written decades ago, my own handwriting, staring back at me like a stranger, reaching through time to shake me awake. I kept reading the same line. If she ever needs me again, tell her I'll return. I must have written it in one of those impulsive fits of sincerity I used to have in my 20s, the kind born from wanting to make the world better, without fully understanding how heavy promises become when someone carries them for a lifetime. I remembered the shelter vaguely, now faces blurred by time, conversations that felt like pieces of someone else's life, and yet Margaret had held on to this single sentence for over 40 years as if it was scripture. I sat back, overwhelmed by guilt and tenderness, unsure of how to reconcile the man I once was with the man sitting here now, older, slower, softer, around the edges, carrying regrets like old coins clinking in my pockets. Outside the hall, a cart squeaked by, nurses murmuring gentle encouragements to patients whose days had begun to fold into one another like soft laundry. There was a peace to the place, but also a quiet desperation, as if every room contained a story waiting for someone to remember it. I didn't know then that Margaret's story was far from finished, or that mine was about to uproot itself entirely. When the nurse returned to check on her, she gave me a warm smile, the kind reserved for family. She's calmer with you here, she said softly. She's been waiting a long time. I swallowed, unsure how to respond. Did she ever talk about me before today? The nurse hesitated. Now and then, she admitted. Mostly at night. She'd wake up, confused, calling your name, asking if you were coming. My chest tightened. Why didn't anyone call sooner? She sighed. We didn't know who you were. She only ever said Robin, and that you had promised something important. But yesterday, she described your face so clearly we were able to match it to a photo online. She paused. She was afraid you wouldn't come. I looked at Margaret, small, fragile. Her breath shallow and felt the weight of that fear, felt the unfairness of it. I should have come sooner, I murmured. The nurse touched my arm gently. You came now. That's what matters. After she left, I walked around the small room, studying the photos on the wall more closely. There were pictures of Margaret with other women, her sister, no doubt, and a few holiday snapshots showing her younger, full of life, laughing with people I didn't recognize. But one photograph near the corner stopped me cold. It was taken in the shelter, a group photo, and there I was, young, full of energy, my arm draped around a woman who looked exactly like Margaret but decades younger. On the back of the photo, someone had written, "He stayed until sunrise." My throat tightened. I remembered the room now, the dim light, the sound of rain outside, the way hopelessness had slowly lifted, like morning fog, as people laughed and opened up and allowed themselves to feel human again. I didn't know then that one night could ripple through someone else's life forever, but it had, and now that ripple had come back to find me. I sat again beside her bed, feeling a strange sense of obligation, not because I owed her anything specific, but because kindness, once given, has a way of returning, like a boomerang you forgot you threw. After a few minutes, her eyes fluttered open. She turned her head toward me, smiling faintly. "You're still here," she whispered. "Of course," I said, leaning closer. "I'm not going anywhere." Her fingers twitched on the blanket. "Good," she murmured, "because I need to tell you something. Something I never told my sister. Something I couldn't." She struggled to sit up. I helped her gently. "Take your time," I said. She gave me a tired but grateful look. "It's about the night you came to the shelter. My sister wasn't the only one you saved." For a moment, I didn't understand. Then her voice softened into something brittle. "I was pregnant then." My breath caught. She nodded slowly, eyes shimmering. "I was terrified, alone. I didn't know if I could do it. I was ready to disappear." She reached for my hand again, squeezing it with fragile desperation. "But you talked about hope, about second chances, about how life doesn't give us what we deserve, gives us what we fight for." Tears gathered in her eyes, and that night, I chose to fight. My breath trembled. "Margaret," she shook her head gently, "you didn't know. I didn't tell anyone. But because of you, I kept the baby." Her voice broke. She grew up. She lived a full life. She became a teacher. She had children of her own. My heart swelled painfully. "Margaret, that's beautiful." She nodded weakly. "I just wanted you to know. Your kindness didn't save one life. It saved 3. Emotion surged in my chest with such force I had to look away for a moment just to steady myself. She waited patiently, her breathing shallow but steady. "That's why I called you," she whispered after a moment. "Not to remind you of a promise, but to show you that you kept it." I blinked rapidly. "But I forgot," I said quietly. "For decades." She shook her head again. "No, Robin, you forget moments, not the love you leave behind." Tears blurred my vision. I took her hand. "Thank you," I whispered, "for remembering for me." A soft knock came at the door. A young woman stepped in mid-40s, dark hair pulled into a neat bun, eyes warm and familiar. She carried a small bouquet of daisies. Margaret brightened slightly. "Lydia," she murmured. The woman smiled. "Hi, Mama." My heart jolted. The daughter, the life Margaret had fought for. Lydia looked at me with curiosity and a hint of recognition. "You must be Robin." I nodded numbly. She gave a small smile, grateful, reverent. "I've heard about you my whole life." "I didn't know," I whispered. She nodded. "I know you didn't. Mom never wanted to bother you, but she wanted to thank you properly." She reached into her purse and handed me a small envelope. "This is from my aunt, the one you talked to that night." My heart hammered. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single sentence written in elegant handwriting. "Tell him the world is better because he walked through ours." I closed the note carefully, swallowing the ache in my chest. Margaret's voice floated softly across the room. She always said you carried more light than you realized. I wiped my eyes. I'm not sure that's true anymore. She smiled faintly. Then let me remind you, one more time. Her breathing weakened toward evening. Lydia stayed on one side of the bed, holding her mother's hand, while I sat on the other, feeling the quiet weight of a life nearing its final page. The sun dipped low, casting orange light across the room. Her eyes fluttered open one last time. Robin, she whispered. Yes, Margaret, I said gently. I'm right here. She smiled a soft, peaceful, final smile. Thank you for keeping your promise. Her hand loosened in mine. The monitor let out one long, final tone. Lydia pressed her forehead to her mother's hand, sobbing softly. I sat still, holding Margaret's hand long after her spirit had slipped into whatever gentle place waited for her. And in that moment, I felt something inside me shift, something heavy lifting, something forgotten returning home. I stood, looked around the room one last time, and whispered, "Thank you for remembering me," when I didn't even remember myself. Outside, the cold night wrapped around me like an old friend. And as I walked to my car, I realized something I hadn't understood until now. I didn't just visit a woman in room 12. I returned to a home I built without knowing, a home where kindness never dies, where promises live longer than memory, and where a single night of compassion can ripple through generations. If you stayed with me through this story, thank you. Sometimes, life reminds us that the smallest act of kindness can echo across decades and touch people we never even meet. Margaret's story is a reminder that what we give, hope, patience, always finds its way back to us, even when memory fails and time slips through our fingers. If this journey brought something back to your heart, maybe a person you miss, a moment you treasure, or a promise you once made, I'd be honored to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like to join me for more emotional, nostalgic stories like this one, feel free to subscribe and tap the like button. It truly helps keep these stories alive and helps us stay connected in this little corner of kindness we're building together. Until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of each other.